Okay, you adjourned the committee. We will now go back and we will convene the full board, and we will address the agenda item number 1, the minutes of January 26, February 16, April 13. These are found on your agenda book, page 1 through 1. Are there any corrections, comments to the minutes that we just mentioned? Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of January 26, February 16, and April 13?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Now we will ask our esteemed director, Dr. Markham, to present the director's report and a welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Not too fast. As always, I would like to thank the board for so generously giving of your time in the interest of furthering higher education in our state. I would also like to recognize the staff at the Department of Higher Education for continuing to provide the quality of work that you have come to expect for them and making sure that you're so prepared for this meeting we just moved through so smoothly these days. Since last we met, the Department of Higher Ed has added 2 new employees to our team. Linda Bullion is now our controller, and Kitty Stevenson is our new receptionist. Both of these ladies come to us with extensive professional experience and have already proven to be great additions to the ADHE staff. In addition to the ongoing agency projects listed on this slide, the past quarter wrapped up the fiscal session with productivity funding as well as our regional workforce planning and implementation grants surviving the RSA process. We are now moving forward to produce the second iteration of productivity funding scores that will drive the funding recommendations that we will bring to you for review in July. As promised, the agency continues to review the productivity model at the request of the 2-year college group. A non-credit workforce metric will not be included at this time. You will see a policy update in just a moment. I believe it's agenda item number 10 now. That metric, as well as the post-completion success metric, remain under examination for future consideration. We continue to have conversations about that and examine the types of data that may be used for those metrics. Other changes to the model are also continuously entertained. The presidents and chancellors will be meeting immediately following this meeting to discuss future improvements with the productivity funding work group. The Workforce Cabinet will convene in early June to award the funding for the final 2 years of regional workforce continuation grants. Future use of the revenue for these regional workforce grants is now under review and consideration for how we will move forward. Our agenda is quite lengthy today, so I will end my remarks here, but I'm happy to answer any questions or discuss any topics not laid out in the agenda.
Okay, is that your report?
That's my report.
Thank you very much. We will take the annual report of the student remediation, fall of 217, and Ms. Hazelwood will present that.
Good morning.
Morning.
I have 4 information items for you today. Agenda item number 3 is the annual report on student remediation. Previous coordinating board placement policy required all first-time entering undergraduate students be placed into remedial courses in math, English, and reading based on certain cutoff scores on the ACT or other recognized placement tests. After the coordinating board approved a change to the placement policy, institutions were asked to evaluate the readiness of their students and develop a placement plan based on sufficient evidence of expected student success in college-level math, English, and reading intensive courses. Due to the change in policy, this report will look at the change in the number of students placed into remedial courses using the institution's new placement plan measures and compare those numbers to the number of students placed into remedial courses using the previous coordinating board test score placement policy. ADHE's Academic Affairs Division will be working with campus academic leaders to determine the best way to evaluate this change in placement policy and the most informative way to report the effectiveness of these placement plans to the coordinating board in next year's annual report on student remediation. This first chart shows anytime remediation rate, a 5-year trend. The first 3 fall terms is calculated using the test score placement policy. The dark blue column represents the 4-year institutions. As you can see, for fall 13, fall 14, and fall 15, 30.1%, 28.8%, and 28.4% were placed into remediation. Under the new placement policy, 25.8% and 21.4% were placed into remediation. The light blue represents the 2-year colleges. They came down from the high 60s to 55.3% in fall of 16, and then down even further to 52.7% in the fall of 17 under the new method. So the 4-year institutions saw a decrease in overall remediation rates from 30.1% in fall 13 down to 21.4% in fall of 17. And the 2-year colleges saw a decline in overall remediation rates from 67.4% in fall 13 down to 52.7% in fall of 17. As you can see, remediation rates are already being affected by the change to the placement policy. What is not yet known is how the change in placement is affecting student success, but in consultation with the institutions, we hope to bring you some results next year. Here's a comparison of the different types of remediation rates. The previous slide was anytime rates. Those are based on all first-time entering students. It doesn't matter what year they graduated high school. We are also required to report a 2-year rate, which means the student graduated in the last 2 years, and we're required to report a 1-year rate under the recommendation of an interim study that was done back in 2010. And as you can see, there's not a whole lot of difference between these 3 rates. Here's a different breakdown of the anytime remediation rates by subject area and institution type. Light green represents the 2-year colleges, and as usual, math leads the way with the highest remediation rate, 35% for the 2-year schools, 16% for the 4-year colleges, for the 4-year institutions. In English, the 2-year colleges have a 29% remediation rate, and the 4-year universities have a 12% remediation rate. In reading, we have 27% that were remediated for the 2-year colleges and 6% for the 4-year universities. Are there any questions for agenda item number 3?
Yes. Of the 3% or 2.9% who try the 3rd time, do we know what percentage of is there a particular course? Do we have a breakdown of the courses? Say, is it math that they try the 3rd time? Is it tenacity? Do we have a breakdown of which course, if any?
We could get that information for you. That would be a good guess, but we'll look it up. Any other questions? Agenda item number 4 is the annual report on credentials awarded. Every year, colleges and universities submit a graduated student file to the Arkansas Higher Education Information System. This file contains a record for every certificate and degree awarded to students by that institution between July 1st and June 30th of each year. This year's annual report includes academic year 17 credentials awarded between July 1, 16 and June 30th of 17. Here's a basic line chart that shows the trend for the last 5 academic years of all credentials awarded at all higher education institutions in the state. As you can see, we're on an upward climb still. We have a 5-year increase of 12% and a 1-year increase of 2.4%. Certificates and degrees awarded. The last 5 academic years show a steady growth of credentials with 44,071 credentials awarded in academic year 17. The greatest 5-year percentage increase was exhibited by the 4-year universities with 16.8%, representing an increase of almost 3,500 credentials. Overall 1-year growth of 2.4% and an overall 5-year growth of 12%. Another trend chart that shows it breaking out by all the institution types. You can see the consistency of the private independent institutions and the nursing schools. Our 2-year colleges have experienced a slight decline the past 2 years, and our 4-year institutions continue to increase the number of credentials awarded. This next table provides you a breakdown for the last 5 academic years by degree level. Bachelor's degrees comprise 36% of all credentials awarded in academic year 17. Associate degrees comprise 20% of the total degrees awarded for academic year 17. The number of technical certificates saw a decline for the 2nd year in a row. However, the number of students earning certificates of proficiency continues to increase each year. Attachments referenced in your agenda books will be uploaded to the ADHE website Monday, and there is all the detailed information by institution, and all of the demographics will be provided in those attachments. Are there any questions on this agenda item?
The nursing, is that any type of nursing degree?
Are you talking about for the nursing schools?
The numbers
Maria, do you know?
You're talking about the diploma in nursing. I believe that's the PN credential from our private independent nursing schools, standalone. It's not a degree, it's a diploma program.
Mr. Chairman, question. Why the sudden drop-off in the nursing diplomas?
I can try to answer that one as well. We saw during that time period at the standalone nursing programs, they already have pretty small enrollments and they had a decline. So any decline with such a small number of students to begin with represents a pretty big percentage change. So we had a couple of our independent schools decline pretty significantly during 2017. So that really made their percentage go down.
Do you know which specific school, or did the school nursing
I think the only 2 that are included are the Jefferson and the Baptist Health. So those are the 2 independent nursing programs.
Did one of those programs shut down, or is they still operating, or?
They're still operating, and actually I believe that their enrollment is back up in 2018. And you may see, is that a report that you're going to give today too, Sonia?
Not the enrollment, no.
Not the enrollment, but yes, their enrollment has rebounded a bit in 2018. So that big percentage decrease will probably be followed by a pretty big increase for the next year.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Those 2 programs are the standalone independent. There are no public dollars directed to those. There are public dollars directed to those. There are no public dollars. Okay.
Agenda item number 5 is our annual report of student retention and graduation rates. Statewide retention and graduation rate information for students entering Arkansas higher education is presented here for both public and private institutions. ADHE's Student Information System enables multi-year student retention and graduation tracking in compliance with federal student right to know legislation as well as state law. SIS tracks student enrollments and completions for multiple years at their originating as well as in other public and private colleges and universities within the state. Here is a 5-year trend of retention. The retention calculations are based on fall-to-fall comparisons of the students in the IPEDS cohort of first-time entering, full-time, and credential-seeking students from the fall term only for all institution types. The following represents the 1-year retention rates for 5 cohorts. And although only half of a percentage point, this is the first year retention rate declined in the last 5 years. As shown below, the private and independent institutions and the 4-year universities have higher retention rates than the 2-year colleges. This is generally due to the lower rates of full-time enrollment and the higher rates of remediation at the 2-year colleges. Retention rates by institution type only show slight changes for the public institutions. Private independent colleges, which had almost an 8% decrease in retention this year.
Do you know how these compare to national averages?
I think we're below the national average, but I haven't seen recent data. But we can certainly check on that for you. Graduation rates for the 4-year universities. The graduation rate calculations are based on a different cohort than retention. This cohort is defined as first-time entering, full and part-time, credential-seeking students from the entire academic year. Graduation rates are calculated after 4 years, which would be considered graduating at 100% of time, after 6 years, which is considered graduating in 150% of time, and after 10 years, which is graduating at 250% of time. If you follow the blue line, that tracks students that graduated in 100% of time or in 4 years, and you can see the positive trends for those different cohorts. So we see really good improvement of graduating our students in 4 years from cohort 1, and in this case, cohort 1 would be academic year 10. So it would be any student that entered as a first-time student in the 2009-2010 year. We also calculate success rates. The following table provides information on students graduating at the home or transfer institution and continued enrollment at the home or transfer institution, along with dropout rates. Success is indicated by either graduating or continued enrollment at any Arkansas institution. The top table is the 100% rate. If you follow cohort 1, which would be for academic year 10, the graduation rate at the home institution was 23.7%. We found that 2.5% of that cohort graduated at a transfer institution. We found 26.6% of that cohort were still enrolled at their home institution. And we found 12.1% were enrolled at a transfer institution. You add all of those up, that totals in the success rate of 64.9%, and that results in a dropout rate of 35.1%. We provided the information, the same information applies to the 150% table. You can see slight improvements on the 100% rate for the last 3 cohort years, cohort 3, 4, and 5. The 150% rate ranges anywhere between 59.8% and 62.4%. Graduation rates for two-year colleges. The graduation rate calculations are based on a different cohorts and retention. This cohort is defined as first-time entering, full and part-time, credential-seeking students from the entire academic year. Graduation rates are calculated after 2 years, which would be 100% of time, after 3 years, which would be 150% of time, and after 5 years, which would be 250% of time. You see a very similar trend as the 4-year graduation rates. That blue line represents students that graduated after 2 years, which would be 100% of time, and cohort 1 graduated in 2 years at 13.6%, and cohort 5 graduated on time at 20.5%. So nice improvement there too.
Question I have about that is I wonder if that's a little bit, it's not painting a realistic picture, because many of these certificate programs are less than 2 years, aren't they? And yet we're measuring graduation rates in 2 years.
And that is a very good question. We'll go back and check. We have programs that run it several different ways, but we'll clarify that and see.
Thank you.
It's still, even if that's the case, there is still an improvement. All cohorts we run all cohorts using the same report, so there would still be that increase and that improvement between cohort 1 and 5. So we use the same query to run all the numbers. So there would still be improvement. So
you took out the certificate programs that are less than 2 years, the numbers might even look a lot better than this.
Might be, and we'll do that for you. We have the success rate chart for the two-year colleges too. Same pattern as the 4-year. We have cohort 1, the graduation rate. We had 13.6% that graduated from the home institution. We only found 0.2% that transferred and graduated from another institution. We found 43.5% still enrolled at their home institution. And then we found 6% enrolled at a transfer institution. That resulted in a success rate of 63.3%, which also provided us a dropout rate of 36.7%. Success rate on the 100% rate ranges between 63.2% and 66.6% for the 100% rate. For the 150% rate, it ranges between 50.6% and 57.5%. Any questions on agenda item number 5?
A quick question. I'm curious to what impact the changes to the Pell Grant qualifications. I think a couple years ago, I may not have the timeline correct, but it seemed like they tightened up and put emphasis on progress towards a degree or graduation for Pell Grants. I guess my question is there a correlation, and what impact has that had on these numbers? Is it coincidence that these have improved at the same time the Pell Grant rules have changed? If so, what impact has that had?
I don't know, and we would need to run it with 2 separate groups and do one with Pell Grants and ones for students that did not receive them and ones that did receive them, to see if there's how that shifts the percentages. But we'll make a note and take a look.
I'd be curious to know what impact that's had, if any.
Any other questions? Agenda item number 6 is the annual report of retention and graduation of student athletes. The bar chart represents the total number of athletes by institution for the academic year of 17. We had 3,090 student athletes reported to us this year. Of those students, 65% received a partial scholarship. 22% received no scholarship, and 13% received a full scholarship. And the retention and graduation rates, as usual, the athletes have a higher retention rate at 74% compared to all students at 67%. The graduation rate, the 100% rate for athletes is 1 percentage point higher than all students. The 150% rate is 44% compared to 38%, and the 250% rate, all students catch up a little bit from 45% to 41%. The participation by sport, we had 939 students reported in football, 445 reported in baseball, 340 reported in basketball, and 458 students reported in track. We also had 908 students that were reported in other sports. Are there any questions on the athletics retention and graduation rates? Thank you. As I mentioned, the attachments should be uploaded on our website on Monday.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Walker will present the agenda item number 7, the annual report on productivity and recently approved programs. Dr. Walker.
This report is required by our Coordinating Board Policy 5112. Excuse me. One more. Thank you, Mike. In this report, we analyzed 108 programs. Of those, 77 were associates or CPs or TCs. 31 were bachelor's graduate programs. On track as far as meeting or pretty close to viability standard, 47% were in that range. Of the CTs, CPs, and ASs, 53% were on track. Of the bachelor's, graduate, and professional's degrees, 32.3% were on track. So overall percentage of 47.2 and reflected here in 47%. The outlier programs in this analysis, of course, are listed here. Certification would be the UA Pulaski Tech Pre-Health Care Studies program with 338 graduates in 3 years. The associate program at Arkansas Tech in Health Information Technology with 100 graduates in 3 years. The bachelor's program in world language at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, and the graduate program in disaster preparedness and emergency management at Arkansas State University with 77 graduates in the last 5 years. Any questions about this report?
The agenda item number 8 has been deferred until July meeting.
So agenda item number 9, the advanced credit placement policy. To give a bit of context with this placement policy that is outlined in your agenda, currently, Arkansas is one of the few states without an AP policy at the state level. States like Texas, Missouri, Oklahoma, of course, California, they have existing AP policies. Nationally, in 2017, 177,000 students took the AP exams for college credit. And in Arkansas last year in 2017, 27,000 students took the AP exams for college credit. The most popular exams taken by Arkansas students in 2017 were English Comp, English Literature, and U.S. History, respectively. The policy outlines placement requirements or placement suggestions or recommendations to universities. The policy would map 24 AP exams to 27 Arkansas College transfer courses as listed in the table in the agenda item. The policy also outlines a couple limitations with respect to awarding AP credit with ACTS courses. One, the institution must have the ACTS course to award the AP credit for the students. Also, the credit of exams for 4 or 5 or greater. Institutions are allowed to choose more than one course, and then any exam below a score of a 3 cannot be awarded an AHECB course credit institution. The program will be reviewed periodically by the Arkansas Department of Higher Education. Any questions about the policy?
Do I hear a motion to approve the advanced placement policy? Have a motion, second? Second. Motion and a second. All those in favor of approving agenda item number 9, please say yay. Any nays? Right. Agenda item number 10 is productivity-based funding model, and Dr. Markham will present that. It's on page 10-1. Begin. Dr. Markham.
Okay, as planned, we are coming back to the board with revisions to the recently passed productivity-based funding model rule. We need to go back through the promulgation process, and that takes quite a bit of time so that we will have the changes ready for your July funding recommendations. The only changes are on page 3 of the policy, where we have amended the wording regarding non-credit workforce training. You can see the markup there. Through much discussion with the two-year college group, they came to the conclusion that it would not be advantageous to include a non-credit workforce metric, and that we need to address the specific funding and metrics for that outside of productivity funding. So based on that recommendation from the two-year group, we have amended the policy. Do you have any questions about that?
I've got a question. Why?
Basically, the two-year college group felt that we were just introducing another variable into the model that would not necessarily lead to additional funding. So long-term, even though a few colleges might have received additional productivity funding in the first year, as a group, it was not advantageous to include it in the productivity model. I think that they have elected to explore other sources of funding directed toward workforce training outside of this model.
So I would think achievement, once you graduate, is the ultimate measure of how you're doing. I guess I'm a little confused on why we would not pursue a way to measure that and include it in the formula. Graduation
is included. The only thing they've elected not to include is non-credit, so that would be industry-specific training. Okay. And I think that there are probably several representatives from the two-year college group here, if you'd like to hear from someone.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd like to hear an explanation of what the roadblocks are, whether it's the inability to gather accurate information. Is that the reason? Is it they just don't deem it's a very viable measure of success? I guess I'd like to hear more of why we're taking this out.
I can tell you that we met throughout the year and produced several iterations of the model, how we could include it. Part of the problem with industry training is it fluctuates so variably depending on economic conditions, industry moving in and out of an area. So there are a lot of fluctuations in that data. So from one year to the next, it could really impact the overall funding for an institution, many times outside of that entity's control. So that was, I'm sorry, I think I just went out there. Additionally, there is no new funding tied to that, so it's the same baseline funding is used to make those determinations. So by adding another metric, you don't actually add another element of uncertainty, I think. So that was the perspective of the work group that made that recommendation to the larger two-year college group. If anybody from the two-year college group would like to speak, Mr. Stovall's here from ACC, and he might could explain that in a little more.
Mr. Anderson, while Bill's coming to the microphone, if I could, I'm from an industrial area that does a lot of workforce training, and sometimes a community college, our community college, which is a combination of VOTEC and branch that combined in 1992, responds very quickly. And if the chemical company calls and says, we're installing some new equipment and we need a 6-week course in X, and it'll require certification, the community college can respond very quickly, and there's not much within that 6-week course that lends itself to value for productivity training purpose, for productivity funding purposes. But I bet Bill Stovall can give you a much better explanation than that.
Probably get wormier as I speak. I'm sorry. Mr. Anderson, was your question specifically about the placement of the non-credit workforce metric not being embedded inside the productivity formula and rather being an outside measurement? Is that your...
Right. I mean, it seems to be we're abandoning this. We're going to incorporate it, and now we're not. I guess I'm curious why.
Well, I'll do the best I can. We had a very, I'm calling it a robust conversation amongst our 22 institutions last week with, I would say it'd be fair to say that they all pretty much believe that they would like to have it inside the productivity formula, but at this time they couldn't settle on exactly how to make a recommendation to you. So what they did, knowing that it's important to be at least a measurement, because we do believe that this is our space. It makes us a little bit unique and different from other institutions and private training as well. They decided to make a recommendation for FY19 to put it outside the formula and continue to explore the possibility of how it might be a proper measurement inside the formula at a later date.
So there was consensus among the group to do that?
There was, oh yes, they've all agreed that they wanted to continue to work with the department and examine if there's a better way to, because this is a very unique and identifiable mission that we have, and we do believe it does pertain to our productivity, but it's just a little too complicated of a lift right at the moment. So that's why we wanted to accommodate your needs here as a board, not put you into a circumstance of a special meeting and still possibly not be able to meet the time frames of promulgation of the rules and things such as that.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
Are there other questions for Dr. Markham on this item? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve this productive-based funding model?
So moved.
Have a motion, do I have a second? Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. And those opposed, the same sign. Motion passed. Dr. Markham, I'd like to apologize for being asleep at the switch when you presented your annual report, and we thank you for the report, and I promise to do better next time. At this time, we will call on Mr. Bordell to present the Finance Committee report.
The Finance Committee recommends the approval of agenda items number 11 and number 12 to the full board.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving agenda items 11 and 12, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Agenda item number did approve on the action item. Okay, now we'll hear from Dr. Carr on the Academic Committee.
Mr. Chairman, this was too many good programs for a rookie chairman, so Dr. Walker did a great job of presenting the programs, and we have reviewed items 25 and 26, and we recommend the approval of agenda items 13 through 24.
I hear a motion, a second on motion for approving agenda items 13 through 24. We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion is adopted. We would open the floor now to any of the presidents or chancellors who would wish to address the board at this time.
This is my last meeting. I'm neither a chancellor nor a president, but I'm going to take a little license. I would like to ask Dr. Bullock to come to the microphone again, and many of you have expressed some concern for South Arkansas Community College. The 113-year-old administration building was struck by lightning by the storms that came through last Friday night. It started in the attic. The attic was 12 feet tall. It was difficult for the fire department to get some of it out. They had to shelter every time the tornado warning came through. So the staff has been displaced, and I'd like Dr. Bullock to come share with you where they are today with their building.
Thank you very much. I bring greetings from our president, Dr. Barbara Jones, who is at this hour addressing the campus community concerning this crisis that we have been living for the past week. We are well. No one was injured. We apparently have lost our administration building. Was built in 1905. It's a very old building. It has lots of cherished memories. In its history, it has been a junior college, then a high school, then a junior high school, then part of SAU El Dorado branch, and now South Arkansas Community College. So it has a rich history. It had lots of artifacts and memorabilia from all of those stages of its history. And we are all feeling the loss. On a personal note, I attended junior high school in that building. I taught my first class in that building. I was away my entire adult life and have just come back in the last 5 years to be a vice president there. My office was in that building, as was the office of 23 other individuals. We have worked on for some time an emergency management plan, and I am here to tell you, if you don't have one, you need to get one. Ours has worked. We met all weekend, many hours with many people working very hard. And on Monday morning, we opened as usual. All classes were held on time. Everyone displaced had an office space, a desk, a chair, a computer, a printer, and the same extension number on their phone. So we are very thankful to our support team, and we are thankful also to many who we have heard from all over the state for expressions of support and encouragement. For all of that, we thank you, and Dr. Jones wanted me to be sure and say thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Every crisis is difficult. It's a challenge, but we feel stronger today. We believe this will be a monumental change in the history of our institution. We will rebuild. We're waiting on insurance reports for all of that sort of thing, but indications are we can restore the structure completely. We believe it will be better than ever, and we will march on. We feel stronger for having been through this week. But thank you for the opportunity to give that message from Dr. Jones.
Thank you, Dr. Bullock. And Dr. Barton, I should tell you that Faye Jones, you mentioned the Faye Jones School of Architecture, also went to school in that building and graduated on that site. He was inspired at the Murphy Arts District at the Rialto Theater to become an architect. Built his first buildings, designed to build them in El Dorado, including a treehouse with a working fireplace that worked so well that, ironically, it burned down the treehouse. So anyway, come down and see us sometime and see where Faye Jones' roots are.
Thank you, Dr. Bullock, for that report, and we certainly wish you well. We know that there are many memories there, and you can cherish those. Also, I would like to thank Cheryl Johnson for her service on this board. She is term limited, if you will, but we wish you well, and certainly thank you for all that you have contributed to this board and to education in general. Thank you very much. Are there any announcements from the higher ed department? We would announce that the next quarterly meeting will be in July 27 at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville, and I know that they will. It will be a momentous occasion up there. Are there any other announcements that need to be made, Dr. Martin?
I would just like to remind that I've invited the presidents and chancellors to remain after this meeting adjourns to discuss productivity funding improvements for the next iteration. Okay, presidents and chancellors, you heard that, so you're to remain. If there are no other announcements, do I hear a motion to adjourn? All right. Thank you for a great meeting. What? Quick.